Not everybody's gonna wait till Halloween to ghost you. I love horror movies. I love a good ghost story. In my relationships, not so much. And we hear a lot about ghosting when it comes to romantic partnerships, but what about the ghosting that happens in friendships? If we're being honest, those ghosting moments, those breakups probably cut a little bit deeper than your actual romantic partnership. We're starting to come around as a society to understand just how impactful friendship is, just how necessary those relationships are, but just how delicate they are too. And we're still fighting this uphill battle with people trying to make rules or stipulations or even semantics in terms of what is appropriate to happen in a friendship versus what is appropriate to happen in a romantic partnership. And when it comes to this concept of ghosting, it's no different. If anything, it might be worse because we do have people out there talking about, well, yeah, sometimes friendship just grows apart. You don't always need to have a final conversation, which is true in some cases. And, the whole, well, we don't owe each other anything, or, life just gets busy is a poor excuse, but also a very lazy way of saying this relationship doesn't matter enough to me to do something about it. And friends will have disagreements. I think we need to understand that conflict is not necessarily always an indication of an unhealthy relationship. But there's a difference between conflict in a relationship and the conflict itself being the connection. And sometimes we will find that in our friendships where we understand that, hey, maybe this entire time I was thinking more of this friendship than what it actually is, or maybe I desired more from this friendship than what actually could be provided, or what another person was willing to provide, or what I was willing to show up with. The art of ghosting or the concept of ghosting means that there is no real communication or clarity provided for why the connection ended. And a person won't text, they won't respond to calls or messages or respond to, a desire for clarity to be there. And you may wonder, hey, what the heck happened? Or they may wonder about you. And there's a lot that goes into understanding why a person may ghost. However, it is not an excuse for the behavior. Let's say you and a friend have had a disagreement, because that's usually an easier way to determine what's going on. You guys had a disagreement or something came up, somebody may have been hurt by a certain transgression or behavior, and it's been addressed. And someone's response in turn is they decide not to talk to you. They decide not to clear things up. Okay, they decide not to remedy the situation. And you're probably left, or they are, with some level of ambiguity in terms of like, well, what happened? What did I say wrong? In a previous episode, I talked about this art of silent treatment and how in a lot of ways it's emotional abuse, especially in a friendship or a connection where the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Sometimes when we give people the silent treatment, it's a way to control how they behave, all right? If every time you bring up an uncomfortable situation or something that I don't want to talk about, I stop speaking to you, or I withhold my love or my care or my affection. And in turn, you start to learn that, hey, maybe it's not good for me to speak up because every time I do, I'm going to lose this person, or they're going to get angry, or they're going to shut down, or they're going to pull away, and I'm going to feel rejected. Sometimes that is the goal. But when a person will ghost you, sometimes their goal is to just not deal with the accountability of the situation. I don't want to face you. I don't want to face myself. I might realize that I am wrong for how I operated, and to talk to you means that I have to admit that. And sometimes maybe I don't want to repair the relationship, but I don't know how to say that. See, sometimes we may not want to be fully honest with how we feel about other people, or we may not want to flat out say, hey, I don't value this relationship. So instead of saying that to you, I would rather ghost you, because if I don't say that, you never hear me say it, which means that you never think poorly of me. However, we need to realize that ghosting in itself is a poor response to someone who is trying to repair or even correct the situation or just find clarity. And when it comes to friendship, let's be honest, the people that you have in your life, the people that you're choosing in your life, you're choosing them for one reason or another. And a lot of times it's because you deeply care about this person, hopefully. Okay, they mean something to you. You guys spend a lot of time together. You guys talk a lot. Okay, you guys are intertwined in each other's lives, hopefully in a healthy way. This is a person that is very significant to you. This is a person that is very significant in your life. And then to just not have them be there, that is a shock to your system. But to ghost a person means that I don't have the courage, I don't have the integrity, sometimes I don't even have the accountability to face what may be waiting for me. And then the person on the receptive end is kind of always waiting or hoping or wondering, hey, what's going on? And people try to make excuses or reasonings for ghosting. Okay? This is talking about healthy relationships though. This is talking about the idea that if I respect somebody enough, I should at least be willing to have a conversation with them. Okay? And if I care about them enough, then I would also care about how my behavior impacts them. Okay. There are some relationships where there is no point in having a conversation because this person is not willing to hear you. This person is not willing to necessarily change their behavior, especially if it's hurtful. This person doesn't see an issue with their behavior, or this person is just not a good friend. So what are we having a conversation about? But sometimes it's important to realize when you default to ghosting as your mode of operation, versus being willing to actually talk to a person and say, hey, this is uncomfortable. However, I respect you and I respect this relationship enough to have this conversation. And I want to give you the opportunity to provide some clarity on your end, because if you are my friend and I claim you as that, then to some capacity, I have to trust that you mean well, especially if we've been friends for a long time. But when a person does ghost, okay, when a person does give you the silent treatment, when a person does decide the easier way out is to just never speak to you again, okay, or avoid you because I don't want to deal with the discomfort. There's a lot to process and there's a lot to sit with. And sometimes you will blame yourself because you have nowhere else to go with the information and the only person that's left is you. And we will have a tendency to blame ourselves like, oh, well, yeah, if this person disappeared out of my life, then it must be something that I did wrong. I must be that bad of an individual. And I think to some degree, we've all experienced it and we may have done it to someone else. And I want you to ask yourself if you've ever ghosted a person who is supposed to be one of your closest friends, what was the reason for it? And do you think that they actually deserve that? All right. Or have you spent so much time avoiding them that you're looking for reasons to justify why you did it? Because sometimes when people ghost, they'll do that too. Okay. If I have to face you, then I have to face what I've done. So the longer I spend away from you, well, either the more at peace I am with my decision, or the more time I am trying to figure out a reason for what I did in the first place. And maybe I can't find one. But it's also important to recognize that when we do experience someone who ghosted us, when we do experience a person that may have given us the silent treatment, what do you do about that? How do you grieve? Okay? How do you understand that maybe this is not about me, maybe this is about the other individual? And it's not about who's good or bad, who's perfect, who's not. It's just simply about who's more intentional. Sometimes we will learn a lot about a person in those moments of conflict, in those moments of discomfort, okay? In those moments where it is necessary to care a little bit more about our actions and our behavior, and also be more cognizant of the other person we're in relationship with. Sometimes people are more concerned with how they feel in the moment versus how they are attributed to somebody else's feelings long term. When a person is ghosted, that lingers. Okay, so for you, or for anyone who's watching who may have been ghosted from a friend recently, I want you to do some self-reflection. I want you to ask yourself, what has been the history of our relationship up until this time? What is it that I could potentially be accountable for? What have my actions exhibited? I want you to ask yourself, what has been the history of our relationship up until this time? Okay? What is it that I could potentially be accountable for? What have my actions exhibited? And again, it's not about perfection, but if you can honestly say, hey, I was intentional in this friendship, I was seeking clarity when it came to this person, I was willing to hold myself accountable, I have been willing to hold myself accountable. So I'm not really sure what exactly happened. If you can say all of those things, the next step to do is say, well, I probably deserved a better friendship to begin with. Maybe I don't deserve to have this person in my life or vice versa, because if they can't even have a conversation with me, Okay, if they can't even tell me what exactly happened, then maybe they were never the friend that I desired. Maybe I was never the friend that they deserved. The thing is sometimes we won't have the full story as to why people do what they do, but we can just accept the reality. Currently, what I'm experiencing that this person is not in my life, I am not in theirs. There has been no bid for connection or repair. So therefore, in this point in time, we are not friends by definition. Maybe we just have a long-standing history with one another. And before you try to see them as a bad person, just understand that this is a person that I care for. This is a person that I genuinely love, okay? And this is a person that matters to me. And even though what they did was hurtful, I can at least still respect the relationship. I can at least still respect the care that I have for this person. But I could also respect myself and say that, hey, I don't deserve to chase anybody who is clearly showing me that they are not willing to participate in my life, and they're also not willing to have me as a participant in theirs. I deserve better. And when it comes to you feeling bad about yourself, I want you to also take a look at your other relationships. Okay, is that a reoccurring pattern where people just ghost you? Or does this seem to be more of an isolated incident where you guys were probably meant to have a conversation, or maybe, no one had reached out for a while and now this is where you are? What is the recurring pattern? And if you can't find one, then maybe it's not you. Truth be told is when a person ghosts or when we ghost someone else, we are removing the opportunity for full clarity, which means that you should spend your time trying to put the pieces together. That's not what a relationship is. And sometimes one-sided friendships will be that, where one person is always trying to fix things, always trying to correct things, always trying to make peace at their own expense, while another person sits back and they pick and choose how they're going to treat that person on any given day. If you are an intentional friend, if you are an intentional person, you deserve to be met with that. There is no need to sustain a one-sided relationship at your expense, but to somebody else's benefit. And like they say, when someone ghosts you, allow them to rest in peace. So you can do the same thing. Ghosting is a very painful thing, and if friendships actually matter to you, that's even more painful. But friendship breakups do exist, and yes, some people do outgrow each other. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who are just simply avoidant, and they haven't grown up, they haven't developed the communication skills or the emotional maturity to actually address a situation, especially if the relationship matters. So instead, they ghost. Okay, and it could be their own trauma, it could be their own attachment style, whatever the case may be. But let's be aware of impact versus just intention. There could be a lot of reasons why people do the things that they do, but it does not resolve or remove the damage that's caused with what they've done. Remember this, we get to be intentional with our friendships especially. The reason why is because society doesn't make them an obligation. And because society doesn't deem friendship as that important, you have the opportunity to make friendship that much more invaluable to you. And also recognize that I desire invaluable friendships. Sometimes ghosting or sometimes no longer speaking to a person is just the necessary action, but that might not be the most common, nor should it be. Communication is important to sustain a connection. Not just talking, but communication and comprehension. And if we really value people, that means we are willing to be uncomfortable to create a certain level of peace in the relationship with them. But again, sometimes people will ghost because they're not at peace with themselves. And sometimes people will selfishly ghost because they rather just take care of themselves versus being willing to be responsible for the other person they're in a relationship with. And the whole we don't owe each other anything is not true. When you're in connection with the person, you do owe them a certain level of care. You do owe them a certain level of respect. You do owe them a certain level of consideration and thought past your own selfishness. You have to understand when we ghost a person, that means we leave them in a space of ambiguity and fog. And that can be one of the most painful experiences that somebody has. Some people will ghost, all right? It is not always about you, it's them running away from themselves. Because to face you means that I also have to take a good look at who I am and how I treat other people. And maybe I'm not ready for that, but doesn't mean you have to wait around for me to be. So, boundary up, okay? Show some respect for yourself, and the same amount of respect you show for yourself is how you're going to treat other people. A person does one thing, is how they do everything. So take care of yourselves, take care of your friendships, okay? And take more inventory in terms of what your relationship is founded on. Is the health of the relationship more important than just the history? What exactly has been taking place in this relationship? What is the conflict? Okay, what has been the effort to resolve? Or am I always chasing this person to try to fix the connection? Are they always trying to chase me down? Okay, how responsible and accountable am I in my friendships? And then you go from there. But remember, a person who actually cares about you cares about how they make you feel. So again, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and take flight.